Namaskar, this is Firstpost and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. It's a brand new week with a brand new storm. This one features Hindenburg and Adani. The target is India's stock market regulator. The politics is heating up. Tonight, we will break it down for you. Meanwhile, China is seeing an exodus of foreign investors. The last 3 months was a record high exit. In Bangladesh, the Hindus are protesting. They say they feel unsafe. And a leaked speech of Sheikh Hasina blames the US for her ouster. We'll tell you all about it. Also in the neighborhood, S. Jaishankar, India's foreign minister, visited the Maldives. It's quite a turnaround for Malé and its India out president. In the US, Donald Trump is struggling and turning to his new BFF for help. Elon Musk will interview Donald Trump tonight. In the Russia-Ukraine war, the fighting is intensifying in Russia with a fire at a nuclear power plant this weekend. The Olympics are over and India's medals tally is abysmal. 6 medals for a country of 1.4 billion. Why don't we win? We will discuss that. In the UK, school children will be taught how to spot fake news. It's a course the whole world needs. And what is kin keeping? Why are women expected to do it and why is it trending now? Also our joke of the day and the headlines. Israel says the weekend strike on a Gaza school killed several Palestinian militants. More than 90 people, including children, were killed in that attack. This comes amid growing international pressure for a ceasefire in Gaza. Israel has agreed to a fresh round of talks on Thursday, but Hamas wants to implement the truce plan suggested by US President Joe Biden. In India, doctors in government hospitals across several states go on a strike. They are protesting the rape and murder of a young medic in West Bengal. The resident doctor's body was found in a state-run hospital in Kolkata. Police have detained a suspect who worked at the same hospital. Spain's ruling socialists regain control of Catalonia's regional government. A new cabinet is sworn in. The socialists won the most seats in the election held in May. This ends more than a decade of separatist rule in the region. Deadly floods in war-torn Sudan displaced thousands of people. Since last month, Sudan has experienced an intense monsoon season. Torrential rains have led to flooding in the country's north and east. Since April 2023, Sudan's army has been at war with the paramilitary forces. And the Indonesian president holds his first cabinet meeting in the country's future capital, but much of the city remains under construction. Nusantara, the $32 billion project, was to be inaugurated this month, but now it is expected to be fully ready only in 2045. It's another bombshell from Hindenburg, the American short seller. First, they targeted the Adani Group. Now they're going after the Indian regulator. I'm talking about SEBI, the Securities and Exchange Board of India. Now, SEBI is basically India's market watchdog. It is supposed to protect Indian investors. But its chairperson is accused of doing the opposite, of hiding alleged vested interests. I know this is a complicated story, so let's break it down into different parts. Part 1. Who are the players? Hindenburg is a market research company in the US. Their playbook is quite simple. Dig into big companies or business leaders. Find out their corporate malpractices. Short sell their shares, meaning make bets on their shares to fall. That's what Hindenburg does. It exposes malpractices and makes money out of it. That is their strategy in a nutshell, and that's what they're trying to do here as well. On the other side is Madhabi Puri. She is the current chairperson of SEBI, India's market regulator. Madhabi Puri holds an MBA degree from IIM Ahmedabad. She spent most of her career at ICICI Bank. In the last decade, she had a brief stint in Singapore as well. Then in 2017, she joined SEBI. She became a full-time member of the regulator. And in 2022, she was elevated to the post of chairperson. Now, this is very consequential. A, SEBI had never had a female boss. And B, Buch was not a career bureaucrat. So her appointment did make headlines. Which brings us to the second part of our story. What is Hindenburg's smoking gun against her? Well, at the center of it is a fund. It's called IPE Plus. That's what the fund is called. This fund is based in Mauritius, which is a tax haven. And Hindenburg claims that Madhabi Buch and her husband invested money in it. How much money? Around $870,000, which is less than 7 crore rupees. They invested this money in 2015. 2 years later, Buch was set to join SEBI. So the ownership structure was changed. Her husband wrote to the fund in Mauritius. He wanted sole control of the stake. So Madhabi Buch was out, no more joint business. The husband alone would handle and operate the account. And the SEBI chief has admitted this much. She says the fund was managed by her husband's friend. And that's why they invested. Now, I know what you're thinking. Why is investing in an overseas fund problematic? It's shady, maybe, but is it illegal? Well, that's the third part of our story. The fund in Mauritius is allegedly linked to the Adanis. That's what Hindenburg says. It says that Adani used this fund to invest in Indian markets, to manipulate stock prices. Now, let's try to join the dots. The SEBI chief had invested in an overseas fund. Hindenburg says Adani used the same fund and the same SEBI chief is investigating the Adanis. If true, this is a classic conflict of interest. Look at Hindenburg's conclusion. I'm quoting from what they've said. We suspect SEBI's unwillingness to take meaningful action against suspect offshore shareholders in the Adani Group may stem from chairperson Madhabi Buch's complicity in using the exact same funds used by Vinod Adani. Let me simplify that statement for you. This is what Hindenburg is saying. SEBI is going easy on Adani. Why? Because the SEBI chief used the same fund as the Adani Group. That is the charge. Now, Madhabi Buch has denied all of this. She says that she exited the overseas fund in 2018. But a few questions still remain, like, did she disclose this investment to the government? Her statement is silent on that. But let's assume she did. Even then, why wasn't the public informed? You have a history with Company X. Company X is accused of being involved in a financial scam. You are investigating that alleged scam. So didn't the public deserve to know? These are questions that SEBI chief will have to answer, and quickly too. The government has not stepped in yet. The finance ministry says SEBI will handle the matter. SEBI falls under the finance ministry. But it's already been politicized. The opposition has two demands. They want Madhabi Buch to resign or be fired, and they want a joint parliamentary probe into the Adani case. But let's keep the politics aside for now. Let's just say this. We cannot let emotions cloud this case. Hindenburg clearly has its own motives here. I'm sure they bet a lot of money on Adani collapsing. They wanted this group to crash, but that has not happened. Adani Enterprises were 1.5% down today, but it's 28% up compared to last year. So overall, the market seems to have brushed it off. The Sensex closed just 56 points in the red today, and the Nifty just 20 points. So Hindenburg's bet has not paid off. Plus, they are on SEBI's radar right now. The regulator issued a show-cause notice to Hindenburg last month, so clearly they have their own axe to grind. At the same time, this report is a cause for worry. Many people are calling it a hit job on India. That is a stretch. This is a report against one company in India. So our response must be accordingly. It must be measured. The Indian stock market is the fourth largest in the world. Millions of Indians are invested in it. So transparency and trust are not negotiable, and we shouldn't need a short seller to tell us that. It should be the norm anyway. So that's the story of Adani and Hindenburg, just one stock in a market of over 5,000 listed companies on India's Bombay Stock Exchange. Most investors know this already. One company's issues won't disrupt the entire market. In China, however, it is a very different story. Overseas investors are leaving China in large numbers. Between April and June, overseas firms pulled out $15 billion, $15 billion taken out from the Chinese economy. This is a record exit. But it's hardly surprising. In the past 3 years, Chinese stocks have steadily declined as foreign investors have pulled out their money. And how much was the loss? At least $6 trillion. The steady outflow shows that China is unable to reverse the decline and restore confidence among foreign investors. They seem to have given up. And why is that? Why are investors leaving China? Because they see risks, both short-term and long-term. In the short run, they are worried about the trade war between the EU and China. It is intensifying. Brussels has imposed high tariffs on Chinese EVs. It wants to restrict their imports. Made in China EVs now face up to 37% extra taxes in European nations, in EU nations, 37% extra tax. Beijing has filed a complaint against this at the WTO, the World Trade Organization. China has challenged the European tariffs. The complaint says that Europe's actions have no basis in law or fact. They're legally and factually incorrect. That's what China is saying. But here is the argument from Europe. It says, in China, EV makers get state subsidies. So it's not a level playing field because the government is helping car companies. It is helping EV makers. And this allows them to undercut their competitors. They dump cheap cars in European markets, and this hurts the local players. A few months ago, Brussels and Beijing tried to talk about this to settle their differences, but they could not. Last week, China moved the WTO. It filed a formal complaint. Now, for the investors in China, all of this is a risk, and they see this as just the beginning. Today, it's a trade war with Europe. Tomorrow, it could be China versus America. And they see it coming because both presidential contenders in the US are talking about this. Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, they say they want to contain China. Both Harris and Trump want to act on it. Harris wants to invest more in American manufacturing, and Trump proposes a much more hawkish approach.
So with all the other things happening on our border, and they're being built by China to make cars and to sell them into our country, no tax, no anything. Those plants are going to be built in the United States, and our people are going to man those plants. And if they don't agree with us, we'll put a tariff of approximately 100 to 200% on each car, and they will be unsellable in the United States.
Long story short, the divide between China and the West is widening. Foreign investors don't like it. They don't want to get caught in it. They don't want to get caught in the trade war between China and the West, so they're pulling out of China. That is one reason. The second reason is the Chinese economy itself. It is showing clear signs of stress. This year, China set a growth target of 5%, a target that it's missing. The latest numbers show growth at 4.7%. Exports are underperforming too. In July, China's exports grew by 7%. The target was closer to 10%. So the fundamentals are weak. And the even bigger worry is the local governments and their debt. It is like a ticking time bomb. We've told you about this in the past. Look at what local governments in China owe. Anywhere between $7 to $11 trillion. That is their debt. And out of this debt, 7 to 11 trillion, loans worth $800 billion are at the risk of default. A lot of these loans were taken to build infrastructure projects, stuff like your industrial districts and resorts and transit systems and housing projects. Many of these projects have failed. So the local governments are falling behind on their debt repayments. This has forced Chinese officials to resort to extreme measures, like chasing private sector companies. What for? To collect unpaid taxes. More than a dozen listed companies have got notices in China. Local governments are demanding millions of dollars in back taxes, retrospective taxes, meaning these bills are based on old transactions dating back several years. They come out of nowhere. It's like you sealed a deal, say 10 years back, and now the government is telling you that there's a tax on that deal that you must pay. Needless to say, it's unfair. But this is what's happening in China. One company has been asked to pay up to $12 million. Do you know when these taxes were due? 30 years back. But they must pay $12 million now. Another company has got a bill for $92 million for taxes that were due 20 years back. This is a clear case of tax terrorism. But these local governments are so desperate, they're running short of cash. So they're looking under every rock for money. This approach is not sustainable. The Chinese economy needs reforms. Even Chinese officials agree.
Pushing forward Chinese-style modernization faces many complex conflicts and problems, and we must overcome multiple difficulties and obstructions through further comprehensive deepening of reforms, promoting better alignment between production relations and productive forces, the superstructure and economic base, state governance, and social development. This will provide powerful momentum and institutional guarantees for China to achieve modernization.
China has made similar promises before, but it has failed to deliver. Foreign investors are catching on to this reality. They have lost faith in China, and about time, we say. If one company fails, the larger market can still sustain the stock. But if a government defaults on its debt, all bets are off. No wonder investors are leaving China. It's been 1 week. Exactly 7 days ago, the Bangladesh government collapsed. The world watched Sheikh Hasina's dramatic fall and a hasty and chaotic escape from Bangladesh. She's still in India. Her efforts to seek asylum elsewhere seem to be failing. But how is her country doing? How is Bangladesh doing? Over the weekend, there were more protests. Hindus in Bangladesh took to the streets. The Hindus say they feel unsafe despite repeated assurances from Dhaka, from the caretaker leader Muhammad Yunus and the interim government that he leads. They've been promising the safety of minorities, including Hindus, but Hindus feel threatened, so they took to the streets over the weekend. Marches were held in cities like Dhaka and Chittagong. Key routes were blocked. Thankfully, there are no fresh reports of violence, but the situation is tense. Bangladesh has 64 districts. Last week, 45 out of these 64 districts saw violence against minorities. In most cases, Hindus were attacked. Hindu establishments were targeted. Their homes, businesses and temples were attacked. Dozens of Hindus are hurt. Many of them tried to leave. Last week, some 700 to 800 Hindus tried to leave Bangladesh. These are people whose houses had been attacked and looted. They tried to flee to India, but India's border security force stopped them. They were not allowed to enter. As of now, India is watching the situation. Meanwhile, the world over, Hindu communities have raised the matter. Over the weekend, many of them held demonstrations. Take a look at this.
Hindu lives matter! Hindu lives matter! We want justice! Justice! Justice!
We urge to all the concerned authorities in India, in Bangladesh and in United States to take all the necessary action.
The Bangladesh authority to stop all the atrocities and destruction.
Hindus can cease to be expendable commodity because nobody cares.
All of this is building pressure on Dhaka. Protecting the minorities is their biggest challenge at the moment. Caretaker leader Muhammad Yunus said the same before he took the oath of office. He called the attacks on minorities heinous, that's the term he used, and he's urged the student protesters, those who led the campaign against Sheikh Hasina, he's now asking them to come forward and protect the minorities in Bangladesh. In fact, let me quote from his statement. This is Muhammad Yunus. Are they not the people of this country? You have been able to save the country. Can't you save some families? You must say no one can harm them. They are my brothers, we fought together and we will stay together. This is his appeal to students to protect the minorities, including Hindus. Today, Yunus was scheduled to meet Hindu students. We are still waiting for an update on that meeting. Meanwhile, the interim government is also setting up a hotline for all minorities targeted in the recent violence. These are all good moves, but hardly enough. Muhammad Yunus needs to do more to go beyond these statements of support and fix the law and order situation. That has to be the top priority to make the streets of Bangladesh safe again. For the past 1 week, there's been violence across the country, complete anarchy. Angry mobs targeted police stations, torched, destroyed and looted them. There was no sign of the cops. It's like the police force simply vanished. These were the men who led the brutal crackdown on protesters. When the regime fell, they were targeted. So the police went on strike. They said they were worried about their own safety and security. Today, after 7 days, the police withdrew the strike. Reports say they are reporting back to work after getting assurances from the government. Dhaka is trying to reassure New Delhi as well. Today, there was a press conference. Mohammad Touhid Hussain held a briefing for foreign diplomats. He's the advisor on foreign affairs, sort of like a temporary foreign minister. He said the police force will resume full operations soon and the law and order situation will improve. He also addressed the status of Sheikh Hasina. Hussain said that her decision to stay in India will not impact New Delhi's ties with Dhaka. India would welcome that, but it will also closely watch how the security situation unfolds. A stable Bangladesh is in the interest of both sides. So it's been 1 week since Sheikh Hasina's ouster, but we still haven't heard from her. Her son has spoken, her daughter has given a statement, but nothing from Sheikh Hasina. Reports say that she wanted to give a speech before leaving Dhaka, sort of like a defiant last stand. Of course, things played out differently, so Hasina never managed to speak, but some parts of that speech have now leaked in the media. And in it, she's blaming the United States of America for what happened. Let me quote from that leaked speech. They wanted to seize power over the dead bodies of students, but I did not allow it. I stepped down from the premiership. I could have stayed in power if I had surrendered the sovereignty of St. Martin Island and allowed America to dominate the Bay of Bengal. This is a very serious allegation. Sheikh Hasina is basically saying that the United States toppled her regime. Just one problem though, we cannot verify this leak. And her son has already rejected this report. He says that Sheikh Hasina did not prepare any statement. So who do we believe? Let's first look at the background. The US was no fan of Sheikh Hasina's government. They kept Dhaka out of Joe Biden's Summit for Democracy. They even warned of sanctions against some officials. Now, Washington says all of this is ideological. Joe Biden talked about human rights guiding his foreign policy. He didn't have the guts to stand up to allies like Pakistan or Saudi Arabia, so he found a soft target in Dhaka. That's what it was about. But Sheikh Hasina did not see it that way. For her, it was strategic, not ideological. Look at her statement in May. This is what Sheikh Hasina said in the month of May. The offer came from a white man. If I allowed a certain country to build an airbase in Bangladesh, then I would have had no problem. She did not mention any country or location, but the assumption was the same piece of land, St. Martin Island. It is located in northeast Bay of Bengal. It is Bangladesh's only coral island. Around 3,700 people live there. Most of them are engaged in fishing. Now, Sheikh Hasina has raised this issue before. Last year, she said the opposition would sell this island to the US. But Washington denied it. They said no such conversation had taken place.
We respect Bangladesh's sovereignty, and we have never engaged in any conversations about taking over St. Martin's Island. We value our partnership with Bangladesh. We strive to bolster our relationship by working together to promote democracy, including by supporting free and fair elections.
1 year later, it has resurfaced again. The question is, could it be possible? Well, there's one rule in geopolitics: never underestimate the Americans, especially when it comes to toppling regimes. They have a history of doing it. During the Cold War, the US plotted 72 regime changes. 72. A lot of them were fellow democracies. So Washington is no stranger to such power plays. They revel in chaos. Plus, they had the motive to do it. Washington did not like Sheikh Hasina's regime. I'm sure they would love a military base in the Bay of Bengal. So they had the motive and the means. But I'm afraid there is no evidence. Nothing that ties Hasina's ouster to Washington. And it's very easy to blame foreign powers. The Jamaat and the BNP blame India. Hasina and her party blame the US. But you cannot ignore the ground reality. Foreign pressure alone could not have toppled her. Sheikh Hasina's crackdown killed more than 300 protesters, most of whom were students. Yet, they gave her a way out. They told her to apologize and release the jailed protesters. But Hasina ignored that demand too. And only then did they march to her palace. So what happened was a combination of many factors: domestic discontent, arrestive opposition, and foreign pressure campaigns. Washington may plead innocence now, but their policies made a bad situation worse. Staying with the neighborhood, India's Foreign Minister S. Jaishankar was in the Maldives. He had a busy 3 days there. A lot of meetings, a lot of inaugurations, and surprisingly, some progress. I say surprisingly for a reason. The new Maldivian president has distanced himself from India. He even expelled Indian troops from his country. So this visit was a chance to reset, to put all the bad blood behind. Minister Jaishankar met President Mohammad Muizzu. He also had talks with the foreign minister and the defense minister of the Maldives. First, let's look at the progress. Jaishankar inaugurated a water and sewage network with Muizzu. It connects 28 islands in the Maldives. It was built with Indian loans. 6 other projects were also inaugurated. These focus on mental health, speech therapy, and street lighting. Basically, community-focused projects. Again, built with Indian help. Both sides also renewed a deal to train civil servants. The Maldives will send 1,000 bureaucrats to India. New Delhi will train and send them back. This deal will last from 2024 to 2029. Another major announcement was the UPI, the United Payments Interface. A lot of Indian neighbors use this instant payment system. The Maldives will be the latest. I know this sounds impressive for a 3-day trip, but Jaishankar's biggest test was not the projects. It was the politics. Would he be able to bury the tensions? On day 1, the minister made a declaration. He said the Maldives wasn't just a neighbor, it was a natural partner.
That we are not just close neighbors, we are also natural partners. Today, we are mutually invested in each other's development and progress. In this tumultuous environment, India has been and will be an anchor of stability for its friends, partners, and neighbors. To Maldives specifically, we have provided support to deal with economic challenges through financial assistance and budgetary support, and by ensuring uninterrupted supply of critical items.
Did Muizzu reciprocate this warmth? From the looks of it, yes, he did. He thanked India for the continued developmental assistance. He also promised to deepen the relationship, very different from his India out rhetoric, rather. Even the opposition was surprised. That's the Maldivian Democratic Party, or the MDP. They have welcomed Muizzu's outreach to India. But let's look at the bigger picture. Can India really count on Muizzu? What does India's policy towards him suggest? Muizzu's core belief has not changed. He won an election by saying India out. He won a parliamentary majority by saying the same thing. So why would he suddenly abandon it? Logic says he wouldn't. But ruling is very different from campaigning. India is a key investor in the Maldivian economy. It is also the first responder in times of crises. After 8 months in office, Mohammad Muizzu probably realizes this. He can fight history and politics, but he cannot fight geography. Hence his apparent reset in relations. Don't mistake this for a return to the days of India first, though. This is Muizu keeping his options open, which brings us to the second question. What does India's policy suggest? A lot of patience and maturity. That's what India has shown. We've seen racist and personal attacks from Muizu's party, but India has not lashed out, nor has it reduced investments or assistance. Same with troop withdrawal. Muizu was keen on making a public spectacle out of it, but New Delhi completed it quietly. No fuss, no spectacle. It tells you what India is looking at. It's looking at the bigger picture. And that's a message for the entire neighborhood. Because the Maldives is not alone. Nepal is playing India against China. Bangladesh is heading the same way. And Sri Lanka is neck deep in Chinese loans. So let's face it, the equations have changed in South Asia. India cannot afford to live in denial, to dream about the good old days of dominance. You must adapt or perish. And it looks like India is choosing the first option. It is adapting to the changing equation. Having said that, it's also important to draw red lines. Too flexible, and you're seen as a pushover. Too rigid, and you're seen as a bully. India's challenge will be to strike a balance. To the US now, where the race for the White House is heating up. Polls show Kamala Harris taking a lead, and it's left Donald Trump in a slump. Just a few weeks ago, he looked on course to winning this one, but now the Democrats have flipped the picture. So what is the former US president doing? He's resorting to conspiracy theories, gaslighting and personal attacks. And when that's not working, Trump has another plan. A sit-down interview with his new BFF, Elon Musk. In a few hours from now, Musk will interview Trump. Will that boost his campaign? Our next report tells you.
A month ago, Donald Trump was riding a high. He survived a shooting attempt. He was the Republican presidential candidate. His ratings were at an all-time high. There was nothing that could go wrong. Trump thought he would go against Joe Biden. But now he's facing Kamala Harris, and that's changed the presidential race. Kamala Harris is dominating airwaves. She's all over news cycles. Trump is now on the back foot, and it's not a position the former US president likes. So what is he doing? Well, he's using his favorite weapons. The first is conspiracy theories. Trump accused Kamala Harris of using AI to fake the pictures of crowds at her rally in Detroit. He called it election interference. Of course, the Harris campaign has debunked it. But his attacks haven't stopped there. There have been insults. A New York Times article says Trump called Kamala Harris a curse word in private. He was annoyed by her rising popularity. There's also been some gaslighting and targeting her racial identity.
I've known her a long time indirectly, not directly very much, and she was always of Indian heritage, and she was only promoting Indian heritage. I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black. So I don't know, is she Indian or is she black?
His advisors say the situation is far worse behind closed doors. Trump is stewing. He's struggling to get past his anger. His aides want him to attack Kamala Harris's credentials, but he's making this personal, and it's affecting his poll numbers. In swing states of Wisconsin, Michigan and Pennsylvania, Harris is leading. The US Vice President is polling at 50%. Donald Trump is at 46%. Another poll shows the states of Georgia, Arizona and Nevada as a toss-up. Just a month ago, they were leaning Republican. Another poll on the economy shows a Harris boost. 42% say they trust Harris with the economy and 41% back Trump. It may look like a small gain, but it's a 7% improvement from Biden's numbers last month. So Trump's numbers are dipping. Harris is pulling ahead. But the former US president is using a lifeline, his phone a friend option. Coming to his rescue is Tesla CEO Elon Musk. The two are set to sit down for a tell-all interview, one that will be broadcast on X, the social media platform that Musk owns. Now, there's no love lost between the two men. For decades, Elon Musk has voted for the Democrats. Until 2022, he didn't even like Trump. He said in a tweet that the former US president should sail into the sunset. But in the last few months, their relationship has gotten a boost. Elon Musk has endorsed Trump. The former president says he respects Musk. Their bromance is quite visible on X. And now they're willing to take it to the next step, to come together to help Trump improve his numbers. Will it work out? We don't know. But for the showman that Trump is, this is the best way to get his message across.
Now let's discuss the Russia-Ukraine war. This conflict is taking a dangerous turn. Over the weekend, a fire broke out at a nuclear plant, the Zaporizhzhia power plant. It's the biggest in Europe. Both Moscow and Kiev blamed each other for the fire. A cooling tower was damaged. The fire has now been extinguished, but it shows how much worse this war can get. Tensions are still very high. The fighting is intensifying in Russia. Last week, Kiev launched a surprise attack inside Russian territory. It sent thousands of soldiers into western Russia. Reports say Ukraine has captured several Russian villages now. Russia says the Ukrainian operation is expanding. It has ordered 11,000 people to evacuate from Belgorod. Our next report has more.
This was the moment which sparked panic across global capitals. The Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant was on fire. Observers on the ground had heard multiple explosions there. The thick, dark smoke is coming out of one of the cooling towers. Thankfully, it wasn't one of the reactors. But this was a narrow escape. The blaze was extinguished within hours. But it has sparked a bitter battle between Ukraine and Russia, as fighting intensified on the border. Vyacheslav Goldkov is the governor of Belgorod. But today, he looked more like a journalist. Some 11,000 people are being moved out of Belgorod. So Goldkov went from door to door. He was checking in on the residents. A camera person was closely following him and capturing every moment.
Ребятка все хорошие, я и не познаю. Много осталось? Нет, немного, но как бы частично в домах есть дедушки, бабушки. Ну, вывозят.
Such videos are often seen as war propaganda. It is an effective tool to shape public opinion during a conflict. As Ukrainian soldiers have pressed on with their operation inside Russia, the battle of narratives is also heating up. Ukrainian soldiers too are countering the Russians with videos of their own.
Dear Ukrainians, we went into a Pyatiraka Russian supermarket chain. I went inside, and I'm telling you, the selection is poor. The pickings are slim. ATB, Ukrainian supermarket chain, is better.
The Ukrainians had more to say with this video from the Kursk region. It was released over the weekend. These are Ukrainian soldiers planting their national flag in a Russian village called Gavo. It is a strong statement from Kiev. Ukraine is claiming it controls territories inside Russia. Russia's President Vladimir Putin chose to respond to Kiev himself. He has vowed to flush out the Ukrainians.
The main task is, of course, for the Ministry of Defense to squeeze the enemy out of our territories and, together with the Border Guard Service, to provide a reliable guard for the state borders. It is becoming obvious and clear now why the Kiev regime had refused our proposals. So looks like the enemy seeks to improve its negotiating positions in the future.
The war between Russia and Ukraine is at a turning point. It is also perhaps entering its most dangerous phase. The Ukrainian forces launched their attack last Thursday. Since then, they have advanced up to 30 kilometers inside Russia for the first time on Sunday. Zelensky formally confirmed this operation. Kiev's focus remains on Kursk, a region close to Ukraine's border. Zelensky says Russia uses Kursk to strike Ukraine.
Only from the beginning of the summer and only from the Kursk region, our Sumy region suffered almost 2,000 strikes. Artillery, mortars, drones. We also monitor every missile strike. And each such strike deserves a fair response.
This marks Ukraine's largest coordinated assault on Russia since the war started. In response, Moscow has ramped up its aerial bombing of the Kiev region. So while it's a bold move by Ukraine to gain leverage, it doesn't come without costs.
The lights are off, the stands have fallen silent, the athletes' village is empty, Paris is no longer buzzing like it was. The 2024 Olympic Games are over, the 19-day-long journey has come to an end and it's been truly sensational. Paris brought out the best of the Games. The viewership was up, there were viral moments, and in a world divided by wars and conflicts, sports brought us all together. But our story tonight isn't just about the Games, it's about India at the Games. How did we do this year? Let's look at the medal tally first. India won 5 bronze medals and 1 silver medal, so a total of 6 medals. That puts us on the 71st position on the table. 71st, 71 out of a total of 84 countries. How did other countries do? America is leading with 126 medals. China is second with 91 medals. Host France got 64. Of course, India is behind all of them. But guess what? We are also lagging behind Pakistan, Hong Kong, Taiwan, Cuba, North Korea, even St. Lucia. If you don't know where that is, it's a small Caribbean island, St. Lucia. They have a population of just 180,000 people. Even they performed better than us, which begs the question, why is India's tally so poor? We are the world's most populous country, pitching itself as the talent export hub. We are the 5th largest economy with arguably the means to invest in sports. But look at our tally from the last 5 Olympics. 3 medals in 2008, 6 in 2012, 2 in 2016, 7 in 2021, which was our best ever tally, and then 6 again this year. In total, we won 41 medals across 38 Olympics. 41 in 38 games. And not just that, we won only 2 gold medals in the last 30 years, one in 2008 and then again in 2021. Now, we understand that the Olympics is very hard. It's where the best of the world compete. Winning medals is definitely not a cakewalk. And congratulations to all those who did, not taking away from that win. It's a remarkable achievement. All of India is proud of those medal winners. But 6 medals for a country of 1.4 billion is a poor show. So tonight, let's call it out. Why do we consistently underperform at the Olympics and what needs to change? Let's start with our Paris campaign. First, the positives. Neeraj Chopra was our best performer, a silver medal in javelin throw. He won 3 bronze medals. We won 3 bronze medals in shooting, 1 bronze in hockey and 1 bronze in wrestling. What about the other sports? India sent a contingent of 117 athletes. How did the others fare? Except for Neeraj Chopra, it was a bad show for the rest of India's athletic contingent. Archery, table tennis, boxing failed to meet expectations. The badminton team did not win a medal, a first since 2008. The wrestling team fared better. We all know Vinesh Fogart missed out on a medal, and that was very unfortunate. India had 6 fourth-place finishes, meaning we missed those medals, 6 medals by a whisker. So not all is bad, but it certainly calls for introspection. How do we do better? An Olympic athlete needs a lot. Funding, sponsorships, facilities, even top-class coaches. India spent 470 crore rupees for the Paris Olympics. It was significantly more than what we've done in the past, what we used to spend in the past. 470 crores, it does sound like a lot of money. But it isn't when you look at the rest of the world. Every year, the US Olympic Committee spends about $50 million. This year, China's budget for sports was over $1 billion. India is nowhere close to those figures, and that's only part of the problem. Athletes get this money and these resources just ahead of the Games, which doesn't help very much. This investment needs to be long-term. Also, focusing on a crop of athletes is not good enough. You need a wider pool. So here's what we can do, what can be done. Number 1, focus on nurturing players. And we've given this example before, the example of the United States. They get their top talent through college sports. They have the NCAA, the National Collegiate Athletics Association. It's a non-profit that manages college sports in America. They train some of the best athletes, and not just for the United States, but for the world as well. Take Léon Marchand, for example. He's France's swimming protege. He was trained by the NCAA. So that's one way to go about it. Identify top talent, nurture them, invest in them, turn them into world-class athletes. In other words, invest in sports from the grassroots level. Number 2, focus on sports that we can win. Take China, for example. They always focus on lesser-known sports. This year, it was women's BMX freestyle, sport climbing and breaking. It may not get the eyeballs, but you have a better chance of winning a medal. Number 3, send a bigger contingent. In Paris, America sent more than 600 athletes. Japan sent 400. And how many did India send? Only 117. Surely a country of 1.4 billion people can do better. And number 4, develop a sporting culture. As a nation, we truly only care about one sport, and that is cricket. That's where the money flows. So everyone wants to be a cricketer. Everyone wants to watch cricket. Every other sport is seen as a pastime. That needs to change. And we say more than all of this. Let's talk about our mentality. What do we want to achieve? Are we heading to the games to participate? Or are we heading to win? Every time we falter at the Olympics, it's the same blame game. Everyone is a sporting expert. Everyone is pointing fingers. It gets dirty after a point, and soon all of it is forgotten. We go back to regular programming until it's time for the next games. Now we need to break this cycle. Winning needs consistent investment and drive. It needs a national commitment. Until we can find that, we'll be stuck with a single-digit tally and rueful headlines of heartbreak and lost chances. The UK has launched a war, not the kind you're thinking about. The UK is fighting fake news. The government is launching a survey of its school curriculum across primary and secondary classes. They want to change the syllabus and introduce media literacy in schools. Students will be taught to spot fake websites during computer lessons and identify half-truths in news reports during English lessons. At a time when disinformation is pervasive, experts are hailing this as a smart move. And the UK is not alone here. Which other countries have introduced such education reforms? And what is media literacy? Here's our report.
On July 29th, 3 young girls were stabbed in the UK's Southport. As public anger grew, misinformation spread like wildfire on social media about the background and religion of the suspect. Soon, rioting began across the country. Now the UK has launched a war against fake news. Online offenders are being investigated. Influencers accused of spreading hate are being probed. The regulation of social media is being discussed. But above and beyond this, the government is not only trying to find the cure, it's also working on prevention. The UK has a new plan. It wants to teach school-going children how to detect fake news, how to spot extremist content online. Why? This is to arm children against quote-unquote putrid conspiracy theories. And how will this be done? The UK is launching a review of its school curriculum for primary and secondary school students. There are plans to change the curriculum to foster media literacy. The strategy is not clear yet, but the new curriculum will focus on critical thinking. For instance, in English lessons, students may analyze newspaper articles. They will differentiate true reporting from fabricated stories. In computer lessons, they will be taught how to spot fake websites. In maths lessons, they may analyze statistics and notice discrepancies. The Education Secretary says, "It's more important than ever that we give young people the knowledge and skills to be able to challenge what they see online. This is the need of the hour." And the UK is not alone here. In the US, 18 states have enacted formal media literacy education standards. This year, California is expected to join the club. The Indian state of Kerala has a similar program. Students of classes 5 to 7 are being taught how to identify fake news. The curriculum includes lessons about the rights and wrongs of internet and social media. These are recent initiatives, but some countries are way ahead of the curve, like Finland. It launched a fake news initiative as early as 2014, where school children are taught how to identify bots, image and video manipulations, half-truths, and false profiles. In fact, Finland is one of the most media literate countries in the world, followed by Denmark and the Netherlands. Experts say media literacy classes in schools are imperative, especially when distrust in media is at an all-time high. when most children and young adults are getting their news from social media, when content created by artificial intelligence is everywhere. And it's not just about social media. For instance, according to a Stanford survey, 80% of middle school students believe sponsored content is a real news story. This goes to show how crucial media literacy really is. It goes much beyond simply spotting fake news. It's about creating media thoughtfully and assessing the influence of what we see on a screen on our opinions. So the UK has taken a step in the right direction. Children everywhere can only hope that other countries get with the program.
We all have that one family member, someone who remembers all the birthdays, plans the family vacations, or visits a family member when they fall sick. This someone is like the family glue. They're dedicated to bonding. And there is a word for all that they do. It is called kin keeping. Researchers first coined this term in 1985. They called a kin keeper the family communicator, someone who helps the clan stay in touch. In recent decades, this definition has expanded. Today, it refers to all the work that keeps a family connected, from remembering graduations to planning children's play dates, from hiding vegetables in their lunch to deciding meals for family gatherings. These may seem like small tasks, but they all add up, they mount up. They involve mental, emotional, and physical effort. And kin keepers shoulder most, if not all, of these responsibilities alone. They do invisible, often unlimited and thankless work. As a new week begins, we seem to be in the mood for some introspection. So we have a question for you. Have you seen this at home? If yes, who is the kin keeper in your family? Who does all of the seemingly unremarkable, unacknowledged and endless work? It's most likely your mother. At least that's what studies say. The definition of kin keeping has changed over time, but one thing has not changed: the gender. Most kin keepers are women. 91% of them, in fact, according to one survey, 91%, which is not surprising. There is a huge disparity between how men and women spend their time, whether women are homemakers or working professionals, irrespective of how much they earn, their age, their culture. Women do the bulk of housework and childcare the world over. Even when couples split the responsibilities 50-50, the kind of work they do is very different. Say the child wants to go on a picnic or wants to go and play. Who is shouldering this fun time responsibility? Usually the dad. What about cleaning the cupboard or stocking up on lunch? That's for the mother. These are all hypothetical scenarios, but research proves that chores at home have a gendered split. Then there are the hidden forms of labor. Picture a family vacation. There is a lot to be done. The obvious bit is picking a destination, the dates, booking the tickets, packing the bags. This responsibility can be split. But what about the hidden tasks? Like planning the itinerary, making sure everyone is on time, everyone is ready, well fed, well clothed. Who is doing all of this? Usually the mom. Lost a sock? Ask mom. Can't find the passport? Ask mom. Where is dad? Again, you can ask mom. But he is most likely asking everyone to relax. Worst of all, he uses the C word, chill. Now let's be clear, that word has never calmed anyone down. But that's not the problem here. It is the ignorance towards the behind-the-scenes labor, the cognitive and emotional toll, and the mental acrobatics behind every little task. And don't get us wrong, kin-keeping can be a blessing. It can be very rewarding for those who choose it. When kin-keeping comes from a place of agency, it can be fulfilling. But if the kin-keepers are depleted themselves, then it can be a burden, time-consuming and emotionally heavy, leading to a burnout. Which is why now many kin-keepers are speaking up. This term has gone from being academic jargon to the word of the day. It is taking over podcasts and going viral as a TikTok hashtag with millions of views, because millions of women can relate to this. And now they're not only helping their families, but they're also helping themselves. How do you do it? We won't give you TikTok advice. Here is what researchers say. They have a two-step answer: self-compassion and setting boundaries. self-compassion and setting boundaries, both self-explanatory terms. And if you're a family member, express gratitude, acknowledge the work and share the hidden load, because while kin-keeping nurtures relationships, it also takes emotional and physical labor. So it's time we started nurturing our kin-keepers. After 19 days, the Olympics is over. Do you know what we'll miss the most? Not the competition, not the nervous excitement. We will miss the jokes, we say. The internet has been brutal on athletes this year. One mistake and you're meme fodder. So let me introduce the latest victim. Rachel Gunn, aka B-Girl Reagan. She took part in the breakdancing competition in Paris. Most of you may know breakdancing from movies like Step Up. Well, wipe that from your memory, because this is the real thing. This is Olympic level breakdancing. Reagan got a PhD on breaking culture in 2017. By 2020, she was the top ranked B-Girl in Australia. So this was a performance to watch out for. If you don't believe me, see it for yourself.
Not bad, not bad. Now you.
And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. In Greece, firefighters battle out-of-control wildfires raging near Athens. Street artist Banksy fills London with artworks with 8 paintings in the last 8 days. And a Bosnian entrepreneur recreates Van Gogh's Starry Night painting as a natural park. Finally, we are taking you back in history. On this day in 1990, a nearly complete skeleton of a Tyrannosaurus rex was discovered. The specimen was 65 million years old. The bones were extremely well preserved, with 90% of them intact. The discovery allowed scientists to learn everything they know about the dinosaur. We're leaving you on that note. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.